Hey, Christian.
Hey, good evening, Andre.
Okay. Let me plug in my computer. Okay. So today, since we're done now with the writing section, and I already sent the assignment, the second assignment for the writing part, what we're gonna do is we're gonna practice or we're gonna work on punctuation because it's something that I noticed that most students struggle with. So we're gonna see some basic punctuation rules that are really necessary for the writing section. So let's see. Okay. Okay. So before we start looking at punctuation, there's something that's really important to know. And that's basically what a clause is, an independent and dependent clauses. So do you know the difference between a clause, a phrase, and a sentence by any chance?
Yes, but I don't remember exactly the definition.
Okay, don't worry about it. So for example, if I say something like, let's say, the most crowded place in the city. Do you think that this is a phrase, a clause, or a sentence?
Maybe a phrase?
Exactly, this is a phrase. So basically, a phrase is a group of words that do not have a subject and a verb, a main subject and a main verb. So for example, in this case, the most crowded place in the city, it's just a phrase because there's no verb in this phrase, right? The most crowded place in the city, what about that? If I change this and if I say the most crowded place in the city, I don't know, is empty today, that is now a clause. Why is it a clause? Because now it's a group of words, but that contains a main subject and verb, right? In this case, now we have a main subject and a main verb, and it's also expressing an idea. Now, it's not necessarily going to be a complete idea. But it's a clause. Now, why is this a clause and not a sentence? Well, it's just because of the grammar part, because it doesn't start with capital letters and because it doesn't end with a period. But if I copy and paste this and I change the first letter for a capital T and then I place a period at the end, now that's a sentence. Why? Because it's a group of, in this case, it's a clause or a group of clauses. First of all, that express a complete idea or a complete thought. That means that makes sense. And that starts with capital letters and end with a period, right? That's a sentence. So that's the difference between the two of them. Now, one thing that is very, very important to differentiate is independent clauses versus dependent clauses. That is probably the most important part when it comes to punctuation. Dependent clauses and independent clauses. So that means that a clause, make it here, a clause could be independent or dependent. Do you know the difference between an independent and a dependent clause?
Yes.
Okay, so what is that?
An independent express a whole idea, and the dependent, they need another clause to make sense.
Exactly. So an independent clause expresses a complete idea, but a dependent clause needs another clause to make sense. That means that it can't stand on its own. It needs something else. Exactly. So could you maybe give me an example of an independent clause?
Yes, for example, I am excited.
Exactly. Thank you so much. I am excited. That's an independent clause. And can you give me maybe an example of a dependent clause?
Yes. I am excited since I won a game.
Okay. Since I won a game, right? You said?
No, a game.
A game. Okay, great. Perfect. So yes, the independent clause is I am excited because if I just say I am excited, then nobody's gonna expect me to continue speaking. You know, that's a complete idea on its own. Hey, I'm excited. That's it. That's enough. But if all of a sudden I come to you and I say, since I won a game, you're gonna expect me to continue. That doesn't make sense on its own. It can't stand like that, right? If I just say, since I won a game, everybody's gonna be like expecting me to continue speaking and to continue explaining something. That's why it's a dependent clause because it needs something else to make sense. Just on it, just like that, it doesn't make sense. Since I won a game, what? Right? There's something missing. Perfect. Those are the independent clauses and dependent clauses. But both of them are clauses at the end of the day because both of them have a subject and a verb, a subject and a verb, right? So both of them are clauses. So great. Now the first grammar rule that we're gonna see, and this is probably one of the most common mistakes. And so first very common mistake is, let's say, or let's not say first rule, let's say, you can never join two independent clauses with a comma. You can never join two independent clauses with a comma. That means if we have another example of an independent clause, let's say, I won a game. I won a game is a dependent clause, an independent clause, sorry, right? I won a game because just like it is, it makes sense on its own. So if you wanted to join these two clauses, if you wanted to create a sentence joining these two independent clauses, let's say you want to say, I am excited, I won a game. You can't join them with a comma. You can never do this. This is completely wrong. Why? Because the rule says that if you want to join two independent clauses, you must use either a period or, do you know what the other thing is?
Semicolon, I think.
Exactly, a period or a semicolon. So if you want to use these two if you want to join these two independent clauses, you must use either a period or a semicolon. You can do something like this, or you can do something like this. Right, so this is right. This is right. So that is the first rule, and that's usually the one very common mistake that students make. Is that okay so far? Any questions?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Now the second rule is that second rule is well, the uses of comma, basically. One of the uses of comma is that before coordinating conjunction, but we're not gonna call them coordinating conjunctions, we're gonna call them fanboys. Fanboys. Before any fanboy, you need to use a comma. What are fanboys? Fanboys are basically connectors that that join or that are part of dependent clauses. For example, do you know what the fanboys are?
Yes.
So they are
For
or
and
mm,
uh, or and nor but or yet and so.
exactly. Perfect. So before these fanboys, when you use them as coordinating conjunctions, that means that when you use them to join clauses, you always need to use a comma when they are joining clauses. So that means that if, for example, if you say, let's say, I am excited for I won a game, you're using the word for as a conjunction, as a connector. You're not using it as the translation of para, right? You're not saying something like I bought a gift for you. That's a different for. This for here is used as a connector. So if you use for as a connector and it's joining clauses, then you need to use a comma before. Same thing goes for and that's one of the most common mistakes that I see. Many students do this. They say something like, Brazil is the biggest country in South America, for example. And I would like to live there. So many students do that, right? Many students don't actually put a comma before the word and. And the truth is that you need to use a comma before this word when it's used as a connector. That means that when it's connecting ideas, complete clauses, right? With subjects and verbs. Both of them have subjects and verbs. Brazil eats, I would like. Even if the subject is the same, even if you're still talking about Brazil, even if you're saying Brazil is the biggest country in South America, and it is beautiful. Even if you're doing something like this, or it is beautiful, even if you're talking about the same subject, you still need to use a comma there. unless you are not using and as a conjunction, right? There's a different and. If you say Brazil is huge and I don't know, and crowded, you don't need to use a comma before this and, right? Because it's not joining two clauses. So that's really important. Every time that you're using the word and, you need to ask yourself if it's joining clauses or if it's joining nouns or anything else. And if it's joining clauses, then you need to place a comma before, right? That's very important. Same thing goes with nor, but, or, yet, and so. All of them require a comma when used as connectors. For example, I am excited, but I won't say anything. I am excited, so I will throw a party. Right? All of them require a comma. Yet is just a synonym of but. Another synonym of but that also requires a comma is the word still. So I'm going to add them here. Other words that require a comma, still, which is a synonym, a good synonym of but. So I am excited. Still, I want to. And all of the synonyms of the word because. So since, as, they also required commas before the word. The word because doesn't need a comma, but these other synonyms, they do, since and as. So that is the second very important rule. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay, great. And to be honest, the third, I would say, very important rule that you need to remember is that commas are used when you change the traditional, let's say, order of a sentence. What do I mean by that? What is the traditional order of a sentence? Usually, you begin with a subject, then you have a verb, and then you have a complement. Well, the complement could be the object, and any type of complement, right? But basically, you usually have subject, verb, and then everything else. That is the traditional order of a sentence: subject, verb, and complement. That is the traditional way. So you're gonna have to use a comma to clarify when you change that order of the sentence. That means that, for example, if you put the complement before the subject, you will have to use a comma. For example, following this order, we would have something like, let's say, I don't know, used to cry a lot, or I used to, cry a lot when I was a kid. Let's say this is your sentence. Is it following the traditional order of a sentence?
Yes.
Yes, right? Because we have the subject first, I, then we have the verb, used to cry, all of that is the verb. Then we have the complement, which is basically going to be everything else. I used to cry, how much? A lot. When I was a kid. So you have different types of complements there. But what happens if I, for some reason, decide to change that traditional order? So if I decide to start with a complement rather than with the subject, if I say, when I was a kid, I used to cry a lot. Now the subject is here. The verb is the same, used to cry. And the complement, first of all, I have placed it in the beginning a little bit, and then I have something else at the end. But since I'm not respecting the traditional order of subject and verb, and I'm using the complement first, I will have to use a comma to separate the ideas, right? So that is the rule. You need to use a comma when you change the traditional order of the sentence. If you put the complement in the beginning, or if you put the complement in the middle, you could always say, when I was a kid, used to cry a lot. So again, you're putting the complement in a different place. You're not putting it at the end of the sentence. Now it's in the middle. So since you're changing the traditional order, then you will have to use commas. So that is another very important rule, I would say, that you need to remember. Is that okay? Is it understandable?
Yes, it is.
Any questions?
No, it's all clear.
Okay, and this applies this applies to all of or most of the subordinate conjunctions. Subordinate conjunctions are basically these words that join ideas in different ways. So there are many subordinated conjunctions. I don't know if I have here I consider. So there are many. Some of them are these ones here. We're gonna copy them. And they are used for different purposes. But all of these have the same rule. If you use these subordinating conjunctions in the beginning of the sentence, you have to use a comma. And it's because of this same rule that I just explained. Because, for example, when is a subordinate conjunction. It should be here. This is the word when. And it's the same if you use after, although, as if, as long as, because, before, all of them. For example, if you use the word after, if you say, I will pick you up, I don't know, after I'm done with this. Since you're starting with the subject, then you have the verb, will pick, and then you have all the complement. Since the complement is at the end, then nothing happens. You don't have to do anything. But if you put the complement in the beginning, so if you have the subordinate conjunction in the beginning here, so let's say after I'm done with this, I will pick you up. So now you do have to use a comma because of this same rule, but also because of the rule of subordinate conjunctions. For subordinate conjunctions, when they go in the beginning, you always have to use a comma. So after I'm done with this, I will pick you up. If you use although, it's the same rule. I will pick you up, although I don't want. You don't need a comma. But if you place that although in the beginning, now you need a comma. Although I don't want to, comma, I will pick you up. As if, as long as, because. Same thing with because. You don't need a comma when it's in the middle. You say, I don't know. I like music because it calms me down. It's in the middle, you don't need any commas. But if it's in the end, if it's in the beginning, then you need a comma. So it's the same rule. Before, despite, even though, even if, in order that, rather than, since. Since, since when it's used like desde, then it follows the same rules. But when it's used as a synonym of the word because, then it needs a comma. And then you have so that, though, unless, until, when, whereas, whether. These three last ones are exceptions to the rule. Well, the fourth one. The four of them require a comma before when used as connectors. That means that if you want to say something like, I live, or let's say, I like sushi, or I don't know. I am, yes, let's say, I like sushi while you like pizza. This is an exception. You have to use the comma no matter where it is. If it's in the beginning, you have to use a comma. If it's in the middle, you still have to use a comma before the word. Same thing with whether, well, not whether. Same thing with whereas and where when used as a contrasting word. So those are some exceptions to the rule. But basically that is, I would say, the most important thing to remember. When you change the order of the traditional sentence, then you need to use a comma. And if you're not changing the order, then no problem. So that is what I would say. It's very important to remember. Is that okay? Do you have any questions about that?
No, it's okay.
Okay, perfect. And then I don't think there's anything else related to punctuation. I don't know if you have any questions on punctuation.
No, just maybe if you make punctuation mistakes in the writing, how many points do you lose?
You lose many points. It's kind of the same thing as because punctuation is part of grammar in a way. So if you like, let's say before one and you don't place a comma because you forgot, it's a normal error, no problem. But if you're making the same mistake all over your essay or all over your response, so before the word and you're never using commas, then that could lower a little bit your score, but it's not going to be a big deal either way.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, there's that. And then, well, another thing maybe that I could suggest for writing, especially I would say for the integrated writing. I wouldn't do this in the no writing question, the writing for an academic post, but is the use of dashes, which is something that I haven't seen that much students use, which is very useful as well for writing. So dashes can be used as parentheses as well. So for example, if you say something like, I don't know, let's say, I don't know, the older members of a family. So you could use parentheses here. You could say the older members of a family. All right, let's change this. But yeah, the older members of my family, my grandfather and I don't know, great grandmother are my I don't know, my biggest inspiration, for example. So this is one way of clarifying something, right? You could say the older members of my family, my grandmother and great grandmother, are my biggest inspiration. So this is something additional. This is extra information that is not really necessary for the idea of the sentence, but that if you consider is important to mention, you can mention it. And you can do the same with commas. I'm sorry. So technically you can do the same with commas. You could, instead of parentheses. Commas, basically, if you use commas instead of parentheses, that means that this information is a little bit more important. When you use parentheses, that means that the reader can delete that portion and or can maybe skip that part, and the reader should still be able to understand the main idea. When you use commas, that means that the reader has to read what you wrote, but it's still just clarifying information. But if you use dashes, dashes are basically these like longer lines, let's say dashes. It's a horizontal line, similar to the hyphen, but it's not the hyphen, this one here. And when you write, you can type 2 hyphens, and that creates a dash. But basically, those dashes have the same purpose as the parentheses and the commas in this case. But the dashes, what they do is they say that this information that is between the dashes is even more important than the information that's not. So the reader has to read that and has to pay special emphasis to that part. So this is something that's very common in English, but that is not so common in Spanish. And that's why people or students who learn English as a second language don't generally use them when writing. But I would recommend that you try to use them instead of parentheses or commas sometimes, because it shows that you have mastered that part of punctuation as well. Maybe that could be one tip that I can give you for punctuation as well, for the integrated writing. Okay. Any questions?
Okay. Um, no. So these dashes are maybe it's more advanced writing, right? So, than parentheses.
A little bit more advanced, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So only that. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else really. Punctuation. Yeah. It's not really format, but it does make a difference when you're writing. So yeah, that would be it. Then we're done with the writing section. I don't know if you have questions about the writing section or anything.
Maybe and then to practice more this part, how can we do that? Maybe with practices from the platform or by our own.
To be honest, I haven't checked if Magoosh has updated the writing section because let's see. Oh yes, they have updated it. So now they have the academic discussion essay. So you can practice there. Or there's also a really good website where I have gotten some of the practices we did. I'm gonna send you the link. And the good thing about this website is that it has sample responses as well for all of the questions that we have. It's a really good link for practicing. You have different questions. And you have templates as well and a video guide. This TOEFL Resources is a really great website for all of the sections. So yes, that's where you could practice.
Oh, okay. So in Magoosh, we write and Then it is scored, or how is it scored?
Well, actually, no. The thing is that Magoosh, when you buy this username, I think they give you like four opportunities for you to write your responses and give you feedback. I don't know if they have already used those chances, but you could try because we have too many students using the same platform, so it's probably already done. But either way, I mean, you have the option of typing there. You can always type there. And what you can do is you submit your scores for feedback. And I'm gonna check the email because I have access to the email. So if I get the feedback, I could send it to you if I get the feedback from Magoosh. So you could try, but I don't know if we still have those because I think that with the account you have like let's say you have like four or I don't know if it's 4 or 5 um, like 4 or 5 opportunities to receive feedback for the plan. But yes, you can try, and if I get the feedback, your write down your name, okay, on top of your essay, so that I know that it's yours.
Okay, but maybe anyway, after practicing, maybe we can compare with sample responses.
No, I don't think they have sample responses here. They do have video explanations on how you could answer the questions. So they give you ideas or suggestions on how to answer the questions after you practice, but I don't think if they have I don't think like um they have sample responses for you to compare.
Okay, so maybe for that, the other link is more useful, right?
Yes, because you have sample responses here. So it's a great idea to try to do all of these. You have a lot of practice to do, and then compare with the sample responses. But don't read the sample responses before writing.
Okay, that's great.
So yeah, you have a detailed guide. So yes, any other question?
No, I don't think.
Okay. So maybe what you can do during this last minutes that we have left, without leaving the meeting, please, because I can't really end today's session or any session earlier, is maybe you can work on the assignment. It's on the WhatsApp chat.
Okay,
So maybe you can work on that and you can send it to me after, like at the end of today's class. But please don't leave the session yet.
okay, we'll do that.
Okay, great. Okay, Christian. So did you finish the post?
Yes, almost.
Okay, good. That's good. Little by little, you're gonna be working on your time as you practice.
Okay, yes.
Yes, and don't forget to send it to the mails that I can give you feedback.
Mhm.
Please, before you go today, don't forget today's daily survey as well.
Okay, I will do.
Well, next week we're gonna start with the reading section already. So I will see you there.
Okay, thank you. So, bye bye.